besties! Welcome to the CV Friends
Daily Show
with
Eva,
Arianna.
Arianna.
Eva. So, we are here at COP30 still. Things are moving around a lot, and there's a lot to be talking about. And there's one very big topic that is
Money, money, money. Did you get my Eva reference?
perfect reference. I think everyone got it. So we're talking about finance.
But it's not just climate finance, it's also capacity building. Because ultimately, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the capacities to know how to manage and deploy those funds, there's nothing we can do.
And accessing finance for national adaptation plans and nationally determined contributions, basically climate plans for everyone who doesn't know the lingo buzzwordy of the UN. NAPs and NDCs, we will call them now. So we had very, very interesting CV friends with us.
And to tell us what the link between climate finance and capacity building is, we talked with our CB friend Justice. Should we hear from him?
Let's go.
Okay, Justice, can you tell us why is capacity building so important to access finance?
Thank you very much. Very important question. I think right from the onset in the UNFCCC process, capacity building has been recognized as an important instrument, not only to access finance, but also to be able to undertake your planning. But once the planning has been done, it must move from planning to implementation. And for that matter, we also need capacity building there, because the plans in itself are not fundable. You need to develop projects that are supposed to be in alignment with the plans, and that also requires another form of capacity building. And capacity building is important because institutions evolve. So you train one group of people today, and there's high attrition. The next day, the government has changed, people has moved around. So the need for capacity building continue to evolve in terms of scope, in terms of need, and in terms of also the institutional changes, because when the people move around, you need to train the new people that come in. And even if the people do not move, different needs might arise, because climate change has high level of uncertainty. So new needs are arising, new technologies are coming up, and you need to train the people to be able to know how to use these technologies, how to design projects to fit into different evolving financing instruments. Either we are talking about concessional projects, we are talking about equity, we are talking about grant based, and these are different skills that is required to be able to design the project and implement the project successfully. So capacity building is an entry point for successful planning and project development implementation. And it's also a very important at the end point to be able to access these funds and help implement the project successfully. So there is no end to capacity building. It's an important component to start to get the countries ready, and it's an important process to get the countries also be able to implement projects on their own.
Oh, perfect. And can you give us, if you would pick 3 words that would, gather everything that you like about accessing finance and national adaptation process, which words would you pick?
3 words in terms of accessing, I would say research, capacity building, South-South cooperation.
That's excellent. Thank you very much.
And we're back, besties. So super impactful. Capacity building, research, South-South cooperation. I think those 3 words are perfect to show what is needed for accessing finance. So then, what was the second CB friend?
So the second CB friend was Achala, because we've looked at capacity building mostly at the individual level, but we also need to build institutional readiness. So let's hear what she had to say. So what would you say are the most important steps countries should take to strengthen institutional readiness for accessing and mobilizing climate finance?
Thank you. My name is Achala Abeysinghe. I'm the Director of the Department of Investment Services at the Green Climate Fund. What I would say is the most important thing is the country ownership. Countries being at the driving seat when it comes to accessing readiness funding from the GCF to really drive change in countries. GCF has now reformed our accreditation approach so that we can bring in more national organizations partners to work with us and also to help them to utilize our readiness funding more strategically. And the second thing we are encouraging countries to do is to utilize our readiness funding for much more coordinated strategic country coordination mechanisms such as country platforms. 2 days ago, 14 new countries declared their interest to establish national country platforms, and GCF is very excited to support these countries to really help countries to be in the driving seat for capacity strengthening, including strengthening their national institutions. Thank you.
So much. Now, if you could describe climate finance in 3 words that encapsulate climate finance, or what your hopes for climate finance are to be, which would these words be?
Climate, 3 words. Impact, ownership, locally led.
We're back, besties. So now, impact, ownership, and locally led. I think other 3 very big words that describe perfectly what's climate finance, what's the need for climate finance, for accessing climate finance. Let's go for, now we had all these important institutions.
The context.
Yeah, that's the context. But now let's talk about these NAPs and NDCs that we were discussing before. So NDCs, nationally determined contribution, or climate plans, we have a really very, very best friend, Amanda, from the NDC partnership, which has been with us at the Capacity Building Hub for many years. So let's hear what she tells us.
So, Amanda, what type of capacity building support is needed for accessing finance to implement the NDCs?
So I would highlight 3 things that are needed. The first one is that the capacity request needs to be delivered, or they need to be set by governments. So we really need to work under the leadership of our government focal points. They're the ones who understand where the needs are and also need to drive that process forward. So ensuring that there's a country-led approach is critical. The second one is about the types of support that we can provide. And one type of support that we found extremely beneficial is actually embedding capacity within government. And so providing that capacity, having it sit within the ministry, report to that government official, and deliver on their behalf. And that's been really instrumental to create relationships across ministries, across different parts of society, to ensure that they are institutionalizing the process that's needed, that they're bringing the right actors on board at the right time. These embedded advisors have also been really helpful to help to build these processes in countries. So interministerial coordination, climate finance units, elements that we know are critically important to bring Ministry of Finance to the table to help to deliver with the implementation of NDCs. And then the third and final aspect that I would note is actually the partners, because we can't do this without the institutional partners who actually deliver this capacity. And so ensuring that they're coming forward and that they are really listening to these priorities that governments are raising, and that they're bringing sustained, predictable support to the table to build those long-term capacity needs.
That was perfect. Now, more of a bit of a fun question. Can you give me 3 words that encapsulate what climate finance means to you, or what your hopes for climate finance are?
So the first word would be access. So ensuring that it's actually accessible. The second word would be predictability. So knowing what's coming. And then the third one would actually be programmatic. And I know that's a technical word, but the scale of change, the transformational change that we need, cannot be project by project. It really needs to be large-scale transformational projects, and the finance needs to speak to that.
And we're back, besties. So now it was access, predictability, and programmatic. Predictability to know what's coming, and programmatic to actually find something sustainable that could lead us to that transformational change that is needed.
So having looked at mitigation, now let's move over to adaptation, and let's look at the climate targets and adaptation, which, as we mentioned, are the national adaptation plans. So for this one, we didn't have a C bestie. We had a C boss because our next CB friend happens to be my boss. So let's hear what Alejandro had to say. Alejandro, so what type of capacity building support is needed for countries to access finance to implement their national adaptation plans?
Okay, thank you. I think for NAPs, it's very important to take into account that adaptation is a cross-cutting issue. So you have to involve different actors, not only from the Ministry of Environment, but also from the Ministry of Planning and Ministry of Finance. So you need, for example, capacities, or countries need capacities to be able to set up, for example, coordination mechanisms between the different ministers when it comes to the development and implementation of NAP. Of course, you also need technical skills, very specific technical skills, because to develop adaptation projects, you need to have skills that relate to modeling, for example, modeling on the impacts of climate change, and to be able to have strong arguments, good scientific arguments, to demonstrate that your product is about adaptation. Other types of skills for NAPs is about how to make a stronger case to be able to involve, for example, the private sector. So this has to do with capacities to undertake risk assessments so that you have, countries can have arguments that their NAP could be suitable, or activities within the NAP could attract private sector by inserting mitigation risk assessments. For example, when you have public funding and then complemented by private funding, but you need to demonstrate that what is the risk assessment for that, and that requires some capacities. So it's a combination of soft skills, even negotiation skills, to be able to engage with local stakeholders, with indigenous peoples, and that requires a different way of speaking to the stakeholders, and often negotiate with these stakeholders, and that requires also a specific set of skills and capacities.
Or what your hopes are for climate finance to be?
My hope for climate finance to be is that at some point you're not talking about climate finance, that everything that's being financed has a climate component. So there's not climate finance or specific, everything includes climate finance, for example, aligned to the goal of the Paris Agreement Article 2.1c. All financial flows are aligned with low carbon and resilient development.
We are back, besties. So the CB boss is a boss for something, and what he said was really impactful. Like, having that climate component gives us this sustainability that we need.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, we ultimately want to put climate at the center of all of our efforts, whether it's finance, whether it's adaptation, whether it's mitigation, whether it's technology.
Or capacity building.
Exactly.
So, well, thank you again for being with us. We hope you're still enjoying our CB friends.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, besties.
Bye.